Cuban, who had owned the Dallas Mavericks, political ideology aside, a very savvy business guy, a guy that, of course, is on Shark Tank, and people bring in the inventions, their ideas for businesses, and he does a yay or nay. I believe Kevin O'Leary's on there. I like that guy a lot. But nonetheless, he's got a lot of experience because of his ownership tie with the Dallas Mavericks.
Mark Cuban just dropped a bombshell that's shaking the WNBA to its core. The billionaire former Mavericks owner stepped into the CBA talks and said what no one else dared. The league can't afford to meet these player demands. Not one can't. And his proposed fix? Tear down the current salary structure and rebuild it using the same nil model that's fueling a bidding war in college basketball. Within hours, his thread racked up 750,000 views. Players are buzzing. Agents are calling it revolutionary. Critics? They're labeling it a band-aid on a bullet wound. But here's the kicker. What no one is talking about is that Cuban's plan inadvertently reveals the one secret the league has been desperately trying to bury.
Tweet on what the player's counter-proposal was. Something very interesting in this is he just flat comes right out and admits the WNBA cannot afford to pay these players big salaries. He comes right out and admits it, that the structure, the way the business is set up, they don't make enough money. They don't make enough money.
Let's unpack exactly what Cuban is proposing, because it gets tricky fast. He wants WNBA teams to function more like European soccer clubs, where local sponsors pay players directly through endorsements instead of teams writing salary checks. Picture it like this. Instead of the Indiana Fever cutting Caitlin Clark a $76,000 paycheck from their operating budget, a local Indianapolis car dealership hands her $500,000 for commercials and appearances. The team just facilitates the deal. The money doesn't come from the league's revenue. On paper, it seems perfect. Players earn far more without sinking already struggling teams. But there's one part of Cuban's plan that exposes how broken the system really is. He wants to cap these nil deals based on a player's years of experience.
Revenue payment for players and change how this entire system is done. Now, here's the problem. And he tries to say that, well, there's college players coming into the league that's giving up a ton of money because they're coming into the league. Well, because of NIL deals, and there's some big ones. That's happening in the NFL. It's happening in all sports, but it's happening even in the juggernaut NFL. For example, 7th round of the NFL draft last year.
This is where things get messy. Cuban reached out to several athletic directors at top programs to find out what elite women's basketball players are making through nil deals. The answer? Anywhere from $500,000 to $2 million a year. And that's before we factor in the perks, free room and board, full scholarships, access to world-class training facilities, and the ability to hit the transfer portal each year to negotiate an even better deal. Now compare that to a WNBA rookie salary of $64,000. Suddenly, it's easy to see why Paige Bueckers is seriously considering staying at UConn for another year instead of entering the draft. Why take a pay cut to go pro? And this isn't just a WNBA issue. Texas quarterback Quinn Ewers reportedly turned down an $8 million offer from North Carolina to finish his college career because his 7th-round NFL draft slot would only net him $5 million over 4 years.
Take a pay cut to play in the WNBA. I asked a few ADs, athletic directors, what the going rate is for the star player on a power conference WBB team, a women's basketball team. It's $500,000 to $1.2 million. And if you are always a free agent with the portal, you get your room and board paid for. By the way, I think changes in the college structure is coming. Just letting you know. And you can get a good education if you work at it.
Now here's the part Cuban doesn't want to highlight, but can't avoid. In his own words, WNBA teams don't have the margin dollars from ticket sponsors and shared revenue, like TV, to pay bigger salaries from their own cash flow. Translation: most of these teams are losing serious money every single season. Sure, the new media rights deal will bring in $240 million annually starting in 2026. Sounds big until you compare it to the NBA's $7.7 billion per year deal. The WNBA earns just 3% of what the men's league generates. Cuban knows these numbers inside out. He ran an NBA franchise for over 2 decades. When he says WNBA teams can't afford higher salaries, this isn't hype. He's reading a balance sheet.
NBA, a team can't go to a sponsor and negotiate a direct payment deal for a player. In college, they effectively can with NIL money. When I've written checks to IU, Indiana University, I knew which players they were trying to get with the money. The WNBA needs to look at allowing the same thing. Let the teams go to local sponsors and work out payments to players as part of a sponsorship package. By the way, somebody very astutely in the comments brought up the Las Vegas Aces tried to do something like this, and the league nailed them for it. Nailed them for it. The big-name players have agents to do this. The rest make...
Here's where Cuban's plan starts to unravel. He proposes that a portion of nil money should go into a revenue-sharing pool to maintain competitive balance, because the Chevrolet commercial in New York obviously pays far more than the same ad in Phoenix. Local deals in big markets could be worth 10 times what they're worth in smaller cities. But hasn't this been tried before? Absolutely. In 2023, the Las Vegas Aces were investigated for allegedly paying players through side deals that bypassed the salary cap, exactly what Cuban is now suggesting. The league didn't hesitate. Fines, dock draft picks, and a very public example made of them. So Cuban's revolutionary idea? The WNBA already ruled it as cheating.
Valkyries. New York Liberty. Probably Seattle. I don't know. I know their attendance is good. But I would say you got maybe 3 teams in the whole league, 3, that are probably printing money. The rest of them, I would guess, are losing their ass. Just being honest. Losing their ass. With the help from the league, they could create NIL deals with sponsors that go directly to players. From the sponsors, make it legal. Create a cap per player based on years of experience.
Now let's address the elephant in the room, something Cuban touches on, but never fully confronts. Caitlin Clark. She stepped into the WNBA earning $76,000 from a fever and roughly $16 million from endorsements with Nike, Gatorade, State Farm, and more. Under Cuban's proposed experience-based cap, what happens to her? Does she have to drop sponsors to stay under the cap? Does the league force her to share that Nike money with players in Phoenix and Dallas? If the answer is yes, you've created a system that punishes your biggest star for being marketable. If the answer is no, the cap is meaningless and competitive balance disappears anyway. Cuban doesn't address this contradiction because there's no good answer. Any cap system either penalizes the stars or fails to accomplish anything.
It's the way it is. They can have great addressable market sponsors for market for sponsors. The WNBA would require that some percentage of the NIL money deals go into a pool for a version of a revenue share. This is effectively what happens with jersey ads. I remember advocating that jersey ads be split among all teams because the greatest value to sponsors.
Here's the deeper problem Cuban's proposal inadvertently exposes. The WNBA, as it stands, isn't a fully viable professional sports league. It's essentially a subsidized exhibition league, kept afloat by NBA revenue sharing. When you have to completely overhaul your compensation model just to avoid paying market rate salaries, you're not running a real business, you're running a charity with a competitive element. Cuban hints at this himself, comparing the WNBA to European soccer, where companies subsidize teams as marketing expenses rather than expecting profits. That works in Europe, where clubs are often community assets. But American professional sports operate differently. The NFL, NBA, MLB, and NHL are all profit-driven, with team values rising year after year.
I thought this was interesting from a savvy business guy. Can't stand his politics, but he knows he's got plenty of money. He's made plenty of money. I thought this was interesting. Seems to me like the WNBA and the WNBA PA and Mark Cuban all need to get in a room together. Peace, I'm out.
Let's run the scenario. What if the WNBA actually implements Cuban's plan? Best case scenario. A few big market teams with strong corporate connections like the Indiana Fever, New York Liberty, or Golden State Valkyries figure out how to generate seven-figure nil deals for their players. They become destination franchises. Meanwhile, smaller market teams in Connecticut, Minnesota, and Phoenix can't compete and turn into farm systems for the big market squads. Competitive balance? Gone. Revenue sharing? Impossible, because the money comes from local sponsors, not the league. Worst case scenario, chaos. Agents spend more time negotiating car dealership commercials than actual basketball contracts. Players pick teams for endorsement potential, not wins. Small market fans watch their teams gutted every offseason. And at the end of the day, the fundamental problem remains the WNBA still isn't generating enough revenue to pay market rate salaries. Cuban's system just shifts who cuts the checks from team owners to local sponsors. The business model is still broken. Cuban keeps pointing to college basketball. Top NCAA players are making more than WNBA rookies, but that model isn't sustainable either. Nil money comes from boosters and alumni essentially making donations. It's not a business model, it's speculation. Legal battles over Title IX and nil employment classifications are already shaking the system. Using college nil chaos as a blueprint for pro sports is like using crypto prices from 2021 as a model for stable currency. It's unstable and short-lived. Here's what Cuban should have said. The WNBA needs to grow its own revenue before tinkering with salary structures. Better marketing, compelling storylines, improved broadcasts, and a media strategy that treats women's basketball as a legitimate business, not a charity. The NBA didn't pay players with local sponsored deals. They built a product people wanted to watch, then leveraged massive media deals and profitable franchises. The WNBA is trying to skip straight to salaries without laying that foundation. Don't get me wrong, players deserve fair pay, but you can't distribute revenue that doesn't exist. The WNBA generates around $200 million annually. The NBA, over $10 billion. That's a 50-to-1 revenue ratio. Yet WNBA salaries are roughly 40:1 compared to NBA salaries. On paper, WNBA players actually take a slightly larger share of league revenue than NBA players. That's math, not opinion. So here's the big question. Should the WNBA exist in its current form? If it needs constant NBA subsidies, loses money every year, and can only pay players by creating a convoluted nil system that fixes nothing, maybe it's time to rethink the league entirely. What if the WNBA became a summer showcase league with fewer teams, shorter seasons, lower overhead, and a business model built around what the market can realistically support? Focus on digital streaming, smaller venues, and sustainable growth. Cuban's idea is creative, but it's also an admission that the current system is failing. Instead of addressing the failure, he's adding more complexity to a struggling model. That's not vision, it's desperation dressed up as innovation. So here's my question for you. Could nil-style deals really save the WNBA salary structure, or is this just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic? And more importantly, should the league even exist if it can't generate enough revenue to pay its players without elaborate workarounds? Drop your take in the comments. I'll be reading every single one.